Black horror films. Are they reclaiming the genre or just racializing the fear? Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast of Ghost Stories. I'm your host Shesma.
And I'm Shevita. We're so excited you're here as we dive into the conversation that's both chilling and crucial, the power of Black storytelling in horror films.
Specifically, we're asking, do Black-led horror films reclaim the genre of horror, or do they actually reinforce racialized fears?
And spoiler alert, it's kind of both.
Right? In my research, I argue that Black-led horror films do reclaim the genre by centering Black stories, experiences, and fears. But at the same time, they can also reinforce racialized trauma. And not because of the filmmaker's intentions, but because of Hollywood's structural limitations.
And that contradiction is what makes this such a fascinating and urgent topic. Let's start with the reclaiming part. What changed in recent years?
A lot, actually. Directors like Jordan Peele and Nia DaCosta have totally shifted the landscape. Films like Get Out, Us, and Candyman use horror to address systematic racism, generational trauma, and cultural identity. They place Black characters at the center, not just as sidekicks or victims, but as complex protagonists navigating real racialized fears.
So in a way, horror becomes a tool for critique and empowerment.
Exactly. Robin Coleman, in her book Horror Noir, calls this a form of narrative reclamation. She traces how horror used to erase or flatten Black characters and how Black characters today are rewriting that legacy.
But here's where it gets complicated. Even with all that progress, a lot of these films still rely heavily on trauma, police violence, slavery, historical racism. That stuff is real and important, but when it dominates the genre, it starts to feel limiting.
Yeah, and that's the second part of my thesis. These films can unintentionally reinforce racialized fears, especially for audiences outside of the Black community. Scholar L.B. Bailey talks about this in their 2024 article, how horror often constructs Blackness through what they call necropolitics, or the idea that Black life is constantly under threat, both physically and narratively.
It's the Black pain that becomes a spectacle, right? And that raises the question, who are these stories really for?
Exactly. Even when the intent is empowerment, the form can end up catering to white audiences who are used to consuming Black trauma as entertainment. Think about the buzzwords, raw, real, unflinching. They are often code for pain.
Which brings us to the third point, Hollywood itself, the machine behind the movies.
Yeah, that's where structural limitations come in. Garrett's A Long Way really opened my eyes to this. He argues that white Hollywood has made some progress on race. It still prioritizes what sells. And after the success of Get Out, there was this rush to greenlight more trauma-centered Black horror, because that was what proved profitable.
So even if a filmmaker wants to tell a different kind of story, something joyful or speculative or weird, they might not get the same funding or distribution.
Right. So it's not a failure of imagination. It's a failure of structure. That's why I say that Black-led horror is caught between empowerment and repetition. The creativity is there, the vision is there, but the industry system will still shape what gets made and how it's received.
That tension is so important to recognize. Like in his house, which was incredible, but still centered on suffering, displacement, and horror rooted in war and immigration trauma. And it's not a critique of the creators, it's a critique of the ecosystem that they're working in.
Exactly. And this is where that documentary, Horror Noir, really ties everything together. It shows how Black horror has always been political, always been shaped by the times, and by who holds power in Hollywood.
So what is the future of Black horror look like?
I think it's about expanding the range. We need stories that explore Black joy, Black imagination, Black weirdness, not just Black pain. And for that to happen, Hollywood needs to shift. It's not just about who's in front of the camera. It's about who controls the budget, the script, the marketing.
Well said. And that's why this conversation matters. Black horror is powerful, and it's brave, innovative, and often revolutionary. But for it to evolve, we have to confront the structures that still shape it.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you're interested in learning more, check out Horror Noir, Coleman's Horror Noir book, or Bailey's article on horror and necropolitics. We'll link those in the show notes.
And let us know your thoughts, what Black horror films have changed you, scared you, or made you think differently. We'd love to hear.
Until next time, stay safe, and remember that not all monsters are on screen.
We ate that shit up.
Oh, we did it.